This is the story of my brother and his wife. My brother married a woman with a child a few years ago. The woman, Amelia, was a waitress at a restaurant my brother visited on business trips. After getting to know her, they dated for several years and eventually get married. At first, when I heard it was a remarriage with a child, I was a little worried, as were my parents. But seeing my brother's smile with Amelia and his love for his new daughter, Emma, he looked truly happy. So, gradually, we were able to watch over my brother's family with peace of mind. However, last year my brother changed jobs, and although he wanted Amelia and Emma to move with him, Amelia couldn't quit her current job, so my brother reluctantly had to go on his own. But every weekend, he'd take an express train for a few hours to see his family, and he would always call them at night. To be honest, my brother, who used to tease and be mean but was never very nice, taking his family so seriously was unexpected and surprising to me. However, seeing him so happy makes me feel great. Then one day, when I was home on a day off with my 3-year-old son,
"Could you watch my daughter for a little while? I got a call from church."
Although we had exchanged contact information with Amelia, this was the first time she had called. When I asked why, she said there was a service at the church, so I gladly agreed. I had met Emma before, but this was the first time I spent all day with her. She's only 7 but very mature, helping me with housework, playing with my son. There was no trouble at all. In fact, it was a great help. My son, who hadn't played with other kids before, seemed to have a lot of fun, and I felt very pleased and happy. I even thought having siblings might be nice. But as the night wore on, there was no sign of anyone coming to pick her up. I hadn't been told a time, but I wonder if Emma is getting worried. As I thought this and waited, the date finally changed. Even at this late hour, with no one coming to pick her up, I became worried something might have happened. In the end, when Amelia came to pick her up, it was after 2 in the morning. I was yawning from sleepiness, but Emma, even at 7, was still calm.
"Come play again?"
When Amelia said this as she was leaving, I said, "Of course," and Emma waved happily as she left. Kids these days sure stay up late. Thinking this, I went to bed. I noticed something strange. She was wearing a very flashy and beautiful dress, but didn't she say she was going to church? Amelia's outfit was so flashy that I can remember it vividly even after parting. It sure didn't look like something you'd wear to church. I wondered if she was lying about going to church. But with her husband away on business and raising a child alone, she might need some time to relax now and then. Being her sister-in-law, it might have been hard for her to tell me the real reason. If that's the case, I'm glad I could be of help since I'm close by. With these parts, I fell asleep that day. However, from that day on, Amelia frequently asked me to babysit little Emma 2 or 3 times a week. She always picked her up late at night. My son would wake up from the noise, and I myself wasn't feeling well with the late nights, so I gradually began to refuse. And once my son started daycare and I began working part-time, I hardly had time to look after Emma. About a month after I last saw Emma, my son said he wanted to see her, so I contacted Amelia to see if they wanted to come over and play. I had been refusing for a while, but if Amelia wanted to get by, I thought it might be okay to babysit her again. However,
"I'll pass this time."
she declined. She must have her own reasons, so I told my disappointed son, "We'll invite them again next time," and he understood. Several weeks went by without contacting Amelia, and although I often saw her at the supermarket since we live nearby, I hadn't seen her lately. I wonder if she's busy, I thought, but since my son wanted to see Emma, I was thinking of contacting her again. I was out shopping with my son when I spotted Amelia walking arm in arm with an unknown man. Who? They were arm in arm, so they were obviously close, but I've never heard of Amelia having a close male sibling. Could it be an affair? Unable to call out to her, I secretly followed her with my son in my arms. and the two of them went into a typical-looking hotel. This is too much, I thought, and without being a detective, I took pictures of the whole thing. What should I do? I really wondered whether I should tell my brother or not. My brother looked very happy since getting married, and there's a saying, ignorance is bliss, but in the end, I couldn't keep silent, so I called my brother that night.
I can't believe Amelia's having an affair.
He said. In the photos I sent, Amelia's face was clearly visible, so he seemed to have come to terms with the situation. Hearing my brother's sad voice over the phone, I felt a pang of heartache, wondering if I had done the right thing. But seeing my brother continually deceived is also painful. My brother, who had calmed down a bit, asked me,
How's Emma doing?
I had only witnessed Amelia's affair and was so flustered that I hadn't thought it through. So I told him, she wasn't at the scene for sure, but I wonder if someone's looking after her like she's left with me. My brother said he'd take a long weekend off and come home, so since I couldn't get more involved in my brother and his wife's issues, I decided to just watch how things would unfold.
Thanks for telling me something that must have been hard to say.
He thanked me, but I hope neither my brother nor little Emma have to suffer anymore. I could only wish for that. However, late the next night, my brother called me. I was asleep, and the ringtone woke me up. I answered the phone half asleep, but was jolted awake by my brother's loud voice saying,
Please go to my house right now.
I asked what was going on, and my brother told me in a panicked voice. He said he'd received a call from a payphone, and it was from Emma. And she'd said, Daddy, help me. He couldn't reach Amelia at all. After hearing these things, I finally understood the situation and left my son with my husband, immediately driving to my brother's house. But looking through the window, my brother's house was completely dark. There was no sign of anyone. I tried ringing my brother's doorbell, calling the house phone, and contacting Amelia on her cell phone, but there was no response. What should I do? Where could Emma be? Then, remembering that Emma had contacted my brother from a payphone, I went around the neighborhood's payphones looking for her. After about 30 minutes of searching, I found Emma unconscious on a bench in a small park near a payphone. I rushed over and called her name, but there was no answer. It's winter now. I don't know how many hours she'd been outside, but her body was cold to the touch, and I gasped at how cold she was. I immediately called an ambulance. Within 10 minutes, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics warmed her up, and Emma regained consciousness. When we got to the hospital and I saw Emma in the light, I was shocked. Emma was not the healthy-looking girl I knew. Her face was gaunt, her cheeks hollowed, and her arms and legs were so thin they looked like they might break. And there were bruises all over Emma's body, and I shook. When I told my brother about this, he said through tears over the phone,
Thank you.
And that he would be coming home tomorrow morning. The next day, Emma was still frail, but she could speak normally. So, do you know where Mom went? I asked her. Then Emma said, I don't know. She hasn't been home for about 2 weeks. And said, 2 weeks? Leaving such a little girl alone. Where could she be going for 2 weeks? I cannot understand her thinking at all. I was so angry that I wanted to find Amelia and hit her right away, but I held back my feelings in front of Emma and continued the conversation. How have you been eating during that time? I asked, and Emma replied in a weak voice. Mom gave me $10. That'll be enough for 2 weeks, she said. Hearing Emma's sad voice, I was frustrated at not having noticed her situation sooner. That afternoon, when my brother came home and saw Emma's altered state, he burst into tears, and he kept saying,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
After that, it was said that Emma needed to be hospitalized a little longer. I tried to contact Amelia, but as usual, I couldn't reach her. So I decided to visit my brother's house. Upon entering the house, an even more unbelievable sight unfolded. The phone line was disconnected. There were no signs of living, and there were wrappers from what seemed to be store-bought sandwiches scattered around. Seeing this, my brother seemed to make a decision, and he had a serious talk with Emma a few days after she was stabilized.
Emma, you know that Dad isn't your real dad, right?
At those blunt words, Emma looked surprised for a moment, but then nodded with a somewhat sad expression.
Yo.
And Dad thinks of you as his real child.
My brother said in as gentle a voice as possible, stroking Emma's head.
Oh, I think of Dad as my real dad. I thought about buying bread with the last money I had, but I wanted to hear Dad's voice more.
I felt a lump in my throat at Emma's words. My brother broke down in tears and hugged Emma tightly.
Dad can't forgive what Mom did to Emma. What Mom did was really wrong. That's why I'm thinking of divorcing her. Do you understand what divorce is?
Emma nodded slightly.
But I'm just as pathetic for not noticing when Emma was suffering. So from now on, I want to protect you to make up for that. It might be scary that Mom's gone, but in return, Dad will love and protect you. Will you live with just Dad and me?
My brother's voice was gentler and more straightforward than I had ever heard before. Emma burst into tears as if something she'd been holding back had finally broken, and she nodded vigorously and hugged my brother. My brother couldn't hold back his tears either. Though there's no blood relation between Emma and my brother, I definitely felt a strong family bond between them. I wanted to support them in some way, so I offered to take care of Emma for the next 2 months while my brother was working out of town. Emma seemed to have really enjoyed spending time at our house before and was delighted with the offer. Surprisingly, things moved quickly from there, and not only the divorce but also custody was granted to my brother. He even filed a child neglect complaint, and Amelia is currently being questioned by the police. She'll likely be held accountable for her actions soon. And now, Emma lives with our family as we await for my brother's return. She continues to be a responsible big sister, taking care of my son, and has even opened up to my husband and me, happily sharing stories about things that happened at school. She's eating well again and has returned to being the healthy girl she once was. She talks to my brother almost every day and smiles happily. Emma, who's enjoying her current life, is eagerly looking forward to her new life with my brother, awaiting his return. Had she chosen bread over making that phone call at the time, she might not be alive today. I sincerely wish for Emma, who overcame such a tough life with her small body, to lead a happy life from now on.